Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Michelson. I'm happy to be a PJ Library author. I have some of my books right here across the alley. A is for Abraham, a Jewish family alphabet. My most recent book, The Language of Angels, a story about the reinvention of Hebrew. An earlier book, how's that way? Yiddish reads the right to left, but I shouldn't hold it upside down. And this is Too Young for Yiddish. And this is a book that was recorded by Leonard Nimoy, who grew up in a Yiddish-speaking family. And that will lead me into the book I want to talk to you about now. You could probably tell from my t-shirt. Fascinating, The Life of Leonard Nimoy.
On Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, Lenny watched the men in front start swaying and singing a special prayer. "We're supposed to cover our eyes during the blessing," his father Max whispered. "Don't look, no cheating." Well, Lenny peeked. He was fascinated by what he saw. The men pulled their prayer shawls over their heads, but their chants only got louder. As they blessed the congregation, they raised both arms in the air and held out their hands as if they were shooting a two-handed jump shot. What were they doing with their fingers? Fascinating. He couldn't ask his father, or he would know that he had disobeyed and peeked. That night in his room, Lenny practiced what he'd witnessed. He taped together his index finger and his middle finger, then his pinky and ring finger. By the time of his bar mitzvah, Lenny could make the gesture easily with either hand. His fingers looked like the letter shin, which he'd learned in Hebrew school was the first letter of the word shalom, or peace. So Leonard grew up in a Yiddish-speaking household. His parents were immigrants to this country. They had to escape Eastern Europe. In fact, his mother was smuggled out in a hay cart because it wasn't safe for her otherwise. And things were very, very dangerous for Jews in Eastern Europe when his parents came over. And they came over on a boat. And we have actually the ship account of it where they were called aliens. People who came to this country from other countries because they were persecuted were often called aliens. Well, Leonard continued to work. He got some small parts and he started teaching acting. And then one day, he got offered a part in a new television series. One day in 1965, he got a call from Gene Roddenberry, a producer who was writing a new science fiction television show called Star Trek. He wanted Leonard to play the part of an alien science officer named Spock. He explained that Spock worked with Earthlings on a starship named the Enterprise, which would take the crew to explore many new worlds. But Spock would always feel like an outsider because his father was from a planet called Vulcan, where everyone made decisions based on logic instead of emotion. Leonard wasn't sure he wanted the part. He would have to wear pointy ears and a silly haircut. What if the audience made fun of him? What if his career was ruined? He tried to think about his decision logically. Then he remembered looking at his own father through the camera lens and seeing all the hidden emotion in his face. And he remembered how his grandfather always encouraged him to take chances. And he remembered Mr. Shalfin from back home, who taught him to reach for the stars. That was his original teacher who had him sing on stage. "My folks came to the United States as immigrants. They were called aliens, and they became citizens," he told Mr. Roddenberry. "I was born in Boston as a citizen. Then I came to Hollywood as an outsider, and now it is time for me to become an alien. I am Spock.
So on the second season of Star Trek, we went to see the planet Vulcan, where Spock was from for the very first time. And the script said that he was supposed to shake hands with a Vulcan queen. And Leonard said, you know, Vulcans should have their own way of greeting. Military men salute, Asians sometimes bow. And the producers said, or the director said, well, what the Vulcans do. And Leonard hadn't thought that far ahead. He just thought it would be a good idea to have a different way of greeting. And he stopped and he thought about it. And he remembered back to his days in synagogue when he was 8 years old. And he looked at the Vulcan queen and he held up his hand and he said, live long and prosper. And that became the famous Vulcan greeting. What a lot of people don't know, in fact, was while Leonard had been practicing this with both hands since he was 8 years old, many of the other Vulcans on the crew hadn't been practicing. They had to go backstage and tape their fingers together, just as Leonard did when he was 8 years old. But the show was broadcast, and right away he knew he had touched a nerve, because as he walked to the theater for filming the very next day, people stopped all along the street and they held out their hands and they greeted him, live long and prosper. And so that became a famous gesture.
And today, when so many of us are advised because of the virus not to shake hands with our friends, I'm hoping that we all adopt this new greeting, live long and prosper, as a way to welcome and say hello to friends when we see them. Thank you for listening. I wish everyone a long and prosperous life.